Okay, so today we're going to be doing a video on good fruits for diabetics and bad fruits for diabetics. So if this is your first time to the page, my name is Scott. I am a type 1 diabetic for a little over 30 years now, and I'm also a practicing physician assistant working in endocrinology. So I wanted to create this page to share not only my experience with diabetes, things that I've learned, tips and tricks, and also my experience working with patients and things that I feel has helped, just to really share all the knowledge that I've learned over the years and try to help other diabetics with the disease. So let's go ahead and get started with different fruits and ones that you should eat a little bit more of and ones that you should probably avoid. So the first thing that I wanted to go over before we actually get started and the good fruits and the bad fruits is something known as glycemic index. So this is your first time hearing about this as a diabetic, or you're not that familiar with it. It's definitely something that you should understand because it has a very big impact on your blood sugar levels and how foods are going to affect you. So glycemic index is a value that's assigned to foods that, to put it simply, is just how significantly they're going to spike your blood sugar. So there's foods that are low on the GI scale, generally less than 55, and there's foods that are high on the GI scale, which are closer to 70 or higher. Now, foods that are processed, white bread, cakes, cookies, those are all going to be your high GI foods that are going to spike your blood sugar real high. Whereas your veggies, a lot of your fruits, the good ones, especially that we'll go over, um, and your whole or minimally processed foods are generally going to be lower on the GI scale. And you'll see that foods that have high fiber are going to be lower on the GI scale. And that's typically why it's always recommended for a diabetic patient to add fiber anytime you can to a food to decrease the spike of blood sugar. So let's actually take a look at what I'm talking about here. So this would be a scale of glycemic index. So you see the red here. This would be, say, if you had maybe some white bread, some rice. Cereal is another really big culprit with a really high GI index. So you can see the red here. That would be one of these high GI foods. You're spiking above 200 there potentially. Whereas something down here low on the GI scale would be something like you had some veggies, maybe you had some brown rice, something that was not processed. Just like a better fruit or a veggie would be something with a low GI score. You can see it spikes the blood sugar, but not as significantly. It's drawn out, and that's because of the fiber generally in the foods that you're eating with the low GI score that'll kind of draw out the blood sugar like that. So this is why you want to stick to low GI foods, because you can see the change in blood sugar effect. So let's actually get started on the different types of fruits. Let's first start with the ones that are better for you, that have lower GI score, lower carbs, and the ones that you should be sticking to as a diabetic. So the first one is going to be strawberries. And we're going to see a trend here with our better fruits. And generally, berries are some of the best fruits for diabetics. They have very low GI scores. They're typically lower in carbs. So you stick to berries, and most of the time you're going to be good. So strawberries have a GI score of 41. Remember, we're trying to stick below 55 generally. And for 8 strawberries, which is a pretty good amount, it's only 11 grams of carbs. Compare that to something like a slice of white bread, which has about 16 grams of carbs, and 8 strawberries, which is a lot more food, really, is actually less carbs than that. So you can compare these things and see what's going to really fill you more. And I would imagine 8 strawberries would fill you more than a small piece of white bread, which actually has more carbs. So the second one, grapefruit. If you like grapefruit, not everybody does. This is a really great fruit for diabetics. It does not have a lot of carbohydrates. You figure half a medium grapefruit is only about 15 grams of carbs and a really low GI score. So remember, it's not going to spike the blood sugar. It's going to be a very decreased peak there. You're going to see a very small peak of the blood sugar. So GI score 25, that's on the very low end for fruits overall. So third one, apple, of course, always our go-to. Apple's GI score 39, a little bit higher, but still very good. And carbs 21 for one small apple, so not bad at all. Fourth one is going to be blackberries. Remember, again, we're back to our berries. Like I said, GI score 25, very low. And then an entire cup is only going to be 14 grams of carbs, which is really great. Raspberries, another berry here, GI score 32, and then 15 grams of carbs for an entire cup. So these are foods that you can have that really aren't going to make the blood sugar spike too high. 15 grams of carbs per cup is not much. And GI score of 32 is very low. And that's because of all the fiber. And remember, all these foods have antioxidants and other things that are helpful as well. So moving on to the foods that I'm never going to say anybody should not have a food ever. I just don't feel that way in my own personal life. And in treating patients, I don't think you should ever not have any food ever. I just think you go crazy and you wind up just eating it in excess at one point. But these are foods that you should probably just have in moderation, maybe less so than some of the other fruits I just went over. So pineapple has a lot of sugar, GI score of 66. We're above that 55 point now, and 22 grams of carbs for a cup. So you just want to be careful with this fruit. Raisins is a really big one for spiking the blood sugar. This is a good one if your blood sugar is going low, really. Have like a pack of these with you, and this works well because a GI score of 64 in a small box has 34 grams of carbs. So that's pretty significant. So you want to be careful with raisins for sure. Watermelon, not so bad as far as carbs because an entire wedge is 22 grams of carbs. But look at that GI score, 72. So remember, like closer to 100, you saw a pretty high peak of blood sugar. So 72 GI score, that's pretty high. Does have a good amount of sugar in it, so you want to be careful with watermelon. Grapes, again, just like the same reason raisins, because raisins are just dried grapes. This is another one that's a little bit higher on the GI score. Not terrible though compared to some of the other ones. GI score of 53 and 16 grams of carbs. So again, this one's not as good as the first five that we went over, but it's kind of somewhere in between. It's not terrible, but you do want to make sure that you do have it in moderation, especially because grapes, you can easily eat a bunch of them and then you'll wind up having a high blood sugar later on. And then the fifth one, this one is actually one that kind of surprises people, but bananas have a lot of sugar. One medium-sized banana is 27 grams of carbs and GI score of about 54. Now, remember, like I said before, the more ripe a banana is, the higher that score can go up. So if a banana is pretty ripe, you're starting to see it's browning, it can actually get up to close to 70 of a GI score. So bananas is something, again, you want to have in moderation. Normally, I suggest if you're going to have a banana, try to have about half of it so you don't have as much carbs and, as much of that GI score spiking the blood sugar up. So that's just a general idea of some of the fruits that you can try to have in moderation, and then other fruits that you could probably have a little bit more often that you don't have to worry as much with them affecting your blood sugar. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to be releasing these videos probably every week now and just sharing different things that I've experienced over the years with diabetes, things that I've learned, and just things that I've learned practicing in endocrinology, working with diabetic patients. So I hope this is helpful. If it is, please leave me a like, a comment, and please subscribe. I'm going to be coming out with new videos again, like I said, pretty much every week now. So, all right. Thank you for watching and take care.